It's very uncomfortable to talk about race. It's not something. It's not something I do.
I am feeling apprehensive because I think there's a lot of reasons why I feel like I should be able to talk about race.
I don't want to say anything. Uh, you know.
Who taught you to hate the color of your skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Most of us blacks, or Negroes as he called us, really thought we were free without being aware that in our subconscious, all those chains we thought had been struck off were still there. And there were many ways where what really motivated us was our desire to be loved by the white man. Malcolm meant to lance that sense of inferiority. He knew it would be painful. He knew that people could kill you because of it, but he dared to take that risk.
He was saying something over and above that of any other leader of that day, while the other leaders were begging for entry into the house of their oppressor. He was telling you to build your own house.
Does it bother you that a lot of young black people today have no idea what that was like?
Somebody dropped the ball. You see, a generation of people thought, well, I'm going to send my kids to Bryn Mawr and Brown and to James and to Mason, and I'll send them to Princeton and Smith, and Mount Holyoke. I'll send them to Yale and Harvard, and everything will be all right. And so I don't have to tell them about how awful it was in the 30s and 40s and even 50s. They don't have to know that. Wrong. It is very clear. He, she, who does not learn from her history is doomed to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it ad nauseum.
Is that what we're doing now?
Absolutely. Ad nauseum.
We are beginning to repeat the same.
So it is. This is why this project, why I said yes when I understood what you wanted to do. Absolutely yes, yes. I'm a very good fountain of information, and I have no modesty at all, none. It's a learned affectation, very dangerous. The modesty is put on from without, very dangerous. Because life will slam a modest person against the wall, and the modesty will drop off faster than a G-string will drop off a stripper. Humility is the thing one wants. Humility comes from within out, not out, on. So humility says someone was here before me, and I am here. I have something to do. I too have my responsibilities. And there'll be someone coming behind me who I must prepare the way for.
Hoo-dee-hoo!
I always like to start the show off with something that, sparks your mind a little bit. And if you don't get no wisdom from Maya Angelou, you're not listening to Maya Angelou. That was one of my favorite clips that I often play. I call it Drop the Ball. And it kind of ties into what we want to talk about tonight, because the title of the show today is The Missing Foundation Part 2, 1619 till now. 400 years of failure. And I say failure because if we're still fighting for the same things for the past 400 years, there's a certain level of failure that we have accepted in this country. And I do believe a lot of that failure is because we still searching for an American identity over an African identity. But that's what happens when they destroy you, though, right? When they take away your culture identity, your cultural identity, your religion identity, and redesign you through a bunch of systems and methods that destroy you. Now, your favorite president, Trump, he's repeated it multiple times, and he said it on the debate the other night, of how this 1619 publication by the New York Times, I've got a copy of it. I haven't finished reading it yet, but you can probably go out there and find it. Or if you hit me up on the show 1965 at yahoo.com, I'll send you a copy of mine. And it basically talks about redefining the history as it is taught in the schools. So your president has said, well, I'm going to defund this because this is not a true representation of history. You know what? Matter of fact, I'm just going to play the clip for you. I'm just going to play it.
The left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. As many of you testified today, the left-wing rioting and mayhem are the direct result of decades of left-wing indoctrination in our schools. It's gone on far too long. Our children are instructed from propaganda tracks like those of Howard Zinn that try to make students ashamed of their own history. The left has warped, distorted, and defiled the American story with deceptions, falsehoods, and lies. There is no better example than the New York Times totally discredited 1619 Project. This project rewrites American history to teach our children that we were founded on the principle of oppression, not freedom. Nothing could be further from the truth. America's founding set in motion the unstoppable chain of events that abolished slavery, secured civil rights, defeated communism and fascism, and built the most fair, equal, and prosperous nation in human history.
Did this nigga just say America wasn't founded on oppression? Did he also say these leftists, far leftists, are trying to teach a false history to our children about what happened in this country? And that's what the 1619 Project is about. You try to abolish that, but teaching gay history, let's push that on through. Let's not denounce that. Let's denounce the 1619 Project, because African history in this country is something we don't want to talk about. You even had this Senator Cotton, who said the forefathers said slavery was a necessary evil to help build the Union. I think the first 10 presidents of the United States of America all had slaves. And you would hear excuses like, well, because of economics, I couldn't really free these slaves. I didn't want to be a slave owner. Understand me. I did not want to be a slave owner. Had to do it. I had to make money. It gets to the point, and I got to the point some years ago, even before I started doing this show, of sometimes it's just a necessity to break the mental, we did a show called Cognitive Dissonance. And it's about us living this double-minded life, knowing that we are getting treated a certain way, a bad way, but still fighting. As Mr. Chan says, black people are only people that fight to stay under their oppressor. And we know it's because of economics. We know America would not be this America without slavery. If you got years and years of slavery, free labor, and you're getting a profit from cotton, from tobacco, sugarcane, and these things, not just in America, but when I talk about slavery, I want to talk about it not only in the American sense, but what's happened to our other brothers and sisters on the islands and everything. Now, sugarcane was used to produce a lot of alcohol. Most alcohol today still has a high sugar content in it for fermenting. So a lot of people like to say, well, the North didn't really participate in the slavery like that. Okay, maybe not as much, but you participated in the racism fully. A lot of people would help blacks to escape from slavery, but they didn't want to give them a job. They didn't want to really stand up and fight when racist situations came about. They just said, nigga, we helped you to be free. Okay, my conscience is clear. Then a lot of people will throw around to you, well, after the slavery, the Industrial Revolution came and we really took off then. Where'd you get the money for all that? So, well, let's get our dates, because some people say, well, 1619, we weren't really America yet until 1776. So you got 156 years of slavery not being under America. And then you add on another 90-some years after that, after we became America. But you don't get absolved from the way the country was ran. You were here conducting a system of slavery and oppression. Slavery did not end in 1776. So when America, the good white people, as Trump speaks of, the good hard-working white people that didn't oppress anybody, what are you guys trying to teach our kids? That we were evil bastards in America? We're not going to accept it. We're not going to talk about the medical experimentation that they did on it as they tried to get us to all sign up now for COVID-19 experimental testing. Now, we did enough with that Tuskegee experiment, and I always forget the lady's name that they experimented on to find all these other cures because of her rare blood type, and they did some things with the lady parts. I'll remember it before the end of this show. We're not going to talk about the destruction of the family. I'm just addressing things that Trump is talking about. So he's going to act like slavery wasn't slavery. It wasn't an oppressive thing. The money from slavery that helped the industrial industry to grow didn't exist. Jim Crow didn't exist. This was not another oppressive thing. Well, of course, he wouldn't denounce any type of radical group on TV. I should have loaded up the clip where he calls Black Lives Matter a terrorist group with no problem. The problem with Trump and so many of these other yahoos that support Trump is they want to continue to hide America's original sin. And so when he tried to sugarcoat it and throw out the little $500 billion offer, which he knows is well below what we deserve in this country, that we will probably never get. So he says, well, we can do this $500 million proposal. But what's that going to do? Because what we're owed is trillions. We're owed more money than this pandemic has cost so far. But they always throw that out because they're trying to find the Negroes who just want to go ahead and move on. Okay, but this sounds great. $500 billion. That sounds like a lot of money. Like I talked to a young man and he said he had $100,000. That was his reparation. I was like, man, that is way below what you deserve. On the average, I'm thinking $2 million for each black person, and it's about 44 million of us, and that is I'm going to share this new one because this one came out after Trump's GOP with the 500 million. Then the Democrats. Hold on, let me share my webpage. So then the Democrats, they come out and they're proposing $3 trillion, which is much closer, still a little short in my calculation, but $3 trillion would really be what it would take to do anything toward fixing the economic hole that we have been put in. So as I thought about this, and I'm sitting there and I'm reading stuff, and then something comes across, and it talks about, and I don't even think Chinese in Africa. I think I'm still going to try to load this up. There are about 1 million Chinese people in Africa right now. And I'm hoping this doesn't kick me out. I'm trying to load up another video. And they are now taking over our legacy with the idea of this Trojan horse that they are putting out there, because they follow the principles of what it means to be Chinese and what they need for their country and their people. And I always say, why can't we do what they're doing? I'm sorry, I'm clicking in the background, so forgive me for what I got going on here. But this is definitely something that I need to share and would like to share with everyone. And give me 1 second here. Sorry, it's not technical difficulties. It's just
we are Chinese.
So now we are Chinese. Not come back to my camera.
Africa.
So the Chinese people have moved about 1 million Chinese into Africa, different parts of Africa, and teamed up with some of the African people that are in power. So it's always like we are a part of the destruction that happens to us. And a lot of people don't like it because what it does when they come in with their cheaper labor and everything, it kind of destroys the economy that existed in that area. And so a lot of the people that had small businesses and things like that are pushed out of the market because a lot of times they can't compete with the the economics of what China's bringing. So you got China building a whole infrastructure in Africa. They're building airports, hospitals, train lines. They have a large media presence, and we know how media presence is how the story gets folded and told. So they've got newspapers, websites, TV channels, controlling the media. So they're going to control their narrative of why they're in China, why they're in Africa, excuse me, not China, but now that they're in Africa, helping the people. But the bottom line is China needs oil. And there's plenty of oil there. So they're going for oil. They want to be able to grow crops and harvest them in Africa and send this back to their people so they can preserve Chinese life. So why are we fighting so hard to preserve life here in America for us, a country that shows us on a consistency since the time we came here that you are not an American, no matter what they say? I don't say I am an African American. I don't salute the flag of my oppressor. And the only part I do care about is if we can get some reparations, because if we can get reparations, then the chance stands that we can reconnect with some of these African countries and things and establish our own infrastructure in another land. A lot of times all you see in Africa is the pictures of the bush and all this, but there are buildings and companies and infrastructure there that could help with the intelligence of black folks that have helped build this nation and built companies throughout America could be transported over there. Because I don't want a legacy for my kids to be looking like, yeah, then China came to Africa and just took over. And they started out small, then they started having clashes, military clashes, and, cutting off sections of cities and things like that as they build pipelines and things like this. And then they're teaching, they're like, look, you guys are going to get jobs. So you don't have to be poor and struggle like this. We're going to give you jobs, but we're going to be in control. Sounds like a place we know already, right? Sounds like America. We're going to give you jobs, but we're in control. So now our legacy is going to become in China, the same as it has become here in America, that they will become the new oppressors in that land and take over that land. So if they already got 1 million there now, they'll be guaranteed there'll be 2 million by the end of next year. And then there'll be 4 million. And then they'll try to claim the continent as theirs, and they'll talk how much they've put into it. But they've got a country. They've got economics. So the Chinese here in America don't plead and beg with the oppressor. They're like, we got a whole country. So this is what makes it important of why tearing you away from your culture and your cultural identity is so detrimental to us. They took everything away from us, and then they pitted us against each other. Well, we've all heard the Willie Lynch letter. And they pitted us together with age, color. Your hair is better than my hair. And, male versus female. We still got all this going because, and no knock on the sisters. We love our sisters. But we know, I made a comment last week on the show, and I said, the white man intentionally took the black woman, just like he did on the plantation, and kind of empowered her just a little bit because he felt he can control her a little bit, and then in turn she would control the buck. But it was nothing the buck could do anyway. If he wanted to come down and buck your woman, he could do that. If he wanted to come down there and buck the buck, he'd do that. These are the destructive practices that happen time and time again, and these are the same practices that they mentioned that Trump is saying these are lies about our country, the one he wants to make great again. Let me see. We got a few minutes left in the show. 872-267-2552. Well, you can see it on the screen. 872-267-2552. What is it inside of us where we don't get it? We just don't have enough. If we never build a foundation, we'll never have a house. That's the way that works. Every other group gets it, and then every other group gets to play. Well, we'll team up with them until we can get something. We'll team up until we can get something. But that's not the way it works, people. Survival of your race depends on only what you do to make your race survive. Well, we're not oppressed anymore. Who's not oppressed? Yeah, I don't feel as oppressed as I used to feel because I don't work for them anymore. But I'm still in America, which is an oppressive society, which I get to see the oppression of black neighborhoods. And then I get to see the gentrification of black neighborhoods after they allowed the values to go down. And amazing, when whites move away, your property value goes down. When whites move in, the property value goes up. Regardless of, they can have lower scores than you and still get better rates. Eddie Murphy did a clip a lot of years ago where he painted himself white and he went to all these different locations. And it was so on point, so brilliant. Just like a lot of stuff that Dave Chappelle does. In that clip I showed, Maya Angelou says, we all have a responsibility not to hide the truth from our kids, but to tell our kids the truth and to prepare a space for them to be in. So I mentioned this last week about why people are out in the street protesting and everything, because we haven't given them anything to stand on, to build on. We haven't created a foundation. And why haven't we done it? Because the ones before us haven't done it. And why didn't they do it? Because the ones before them haven't done it. Because we haven't built a foundation. All we do is talk about, let's be Americans. We Americans. And I say it all the time, America doesn't pay reparations to Americans. So we might as well go ahead and stop saying that we Americans until we get some American money. We got millions of brilliant people in the world that can figure out what reparations look like. I did a show myself a few times that I wrote 5 years ago. It's going to involve a whole lot of money that America doesn't want to spend. And that's what Dr. King came to the realization. He said, it didn't cost him nothing to integrate a lunch counter or integrate a bus or integrate a school. But it's going to cost a lot to fix the issues that America created for black people in this country, and that they were going to get a check that was never written, and they had no intention of writing it or allowing you to cash it. They gave you an option. Nigga, you don't like it, you can take your ass back to Africa on your own tab. And now the Chinese are in Africa doing the same thing. It's if you do not recognize your history, you're bound to repeat it. And what I'm seeing now with the Chinese in Africa, I think we're about to see either a revolution of the other countries that have not been infiltrated yet, and that they will start some type of civil war in Africa to block that off. And I would not blame them, because you can't come in here and take legacy away. That's what happened to the blacks in America. And they do distinguish between we Africans. We still connected to the continent. Y'all Africans too. But you all have to realize that your story does not begin and end with slavery in America. It reconnects with Africa, and when you all come home, this is waiting for you all to help us rebuild the legacy and the foundation of what it means to be a black person on this planet. I'm off my soapbox now. Hopefully I've touched the nerve or made someone think, or will have somebody that goes and research some of the stuff I say. Sometimes people say, well, you don't have a ton of viewers. I say, well, if a few people hear the truth, it's still the truth. If you got a 1,000 people and they hearing your lies, that's 1,000 people that heard lies, and that's 50 people that heard the truth. I'm not here to compete with anybody. It is my responsibility, just like Maya Angelou says, to prepare a place for my children and my family to have a place to step into, and a common ground to build on. And that's the responsibility of each and every black person in the world, to sit down and say, what will be my contribution before I leave this place? Think about it. Love, peace, soul, and as we always say, I'm out of here.
Step out of the car. No, you don't have the right. Step out of the car. You do not have the right to do that. I do have the right. Now step out or I will remove you. I refuse to talk to you other than to identify myself.
Now if your woman ain't no revolutionary, she'll persuade you to be a fucking slave for the rest of your days. She'll be grooming you on how to behave, teaching you how to coon and buck dance so that you can be safe. If that brother ain't no rider, soldier, no provider, molder of young minds, check it out. You got yourself a bitch. Think about the time that you invested in him. If he's wearing them skinny jeans, you a lesbian. For every 100 black women who ain't locked up, it's only 83 black men remain. Take away 1.5 million black men who might have benefited their women and their children. You don't know a war when it's waged against you, when it makes you drive your baby mama to the clinic just to kill your own. Ain't no legacy to leave behind, cause ain't nobody sitting on your throne. You motherfuckers are asleep in a war zone, living a nightmare, dying in your own home. If you don't stop, you gon' lose what you got left. I'd rather die trying to fight for my last breath. Freedom or death, you asleep in a war zone, living a nightmare, dying in your own home. If you don't fight, you gon' lose what you got left. I'd rather die trying to fight for my last breath. Freedom or death, nigga. Sandra Bland was a rider. She wouldn't have committed suicide, and you a motherfucking liar. It would not be wise to stop when you hear sirens and you see the police behind you, but you don't wanna die. They gon' shoot you if you run. They gon' say that you was going for the police gun. That's why they shot you like 120 times, but you was still coming, so they put another bullet in your lung. Them devils got you praying while they murder, because they know you on that bullshit. They steady with them full clips and body armor. They kill your women in the street, cause they figure you too weak to do anything about it. You some shit, getting fucked in your sleep. They poison you every time you brush your teeth. You don't care, you behave like a slave. A bitch from the cradle to the grave, on your knees with your hands out, begging cause you won't. You motherfuckers are asleep in a war zone, living a nightmare, dying in your own home. If you don't stop, you gon' lose what you got left. I'd rather die trying to fight for my last breath. Freedom or death, you asleep in a war zone, living a nightmare, dying in your own home. If you don't fight, you gon' lose what you got left. I'd rather die trying to fight for my last breath. Freedom or death, nigga. Freedom or death, nigga. Freedom or death, nigga.
If you just listen,
Freedom or death, nigga. Freedom or death, nigga. Freedom or death, nigga.
I can't wait. Jail. I'm getting it. For what?